Well, hello, Cochav. How are you? I'm so happy to have the opportunity to speak with you. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Welcome to everybody from around the world who is joining us for a very intimate fireside chat without the fire, other than in the proverbial sense of the word. This fireside chat is with a woman who I have come to admire for her tenacity in tackling a topic that is so taboo that not only will most people not touch it, but the majority, even if they are speaking of it, are being denied the right to be heard. And of course, we're addressing today the very painful subject of the abuse, sexual, and other methods involved in the violent crimes that took place on October 7th. So it is my honor to welcome today Dr. Cochav Elkayam-Levy, who is an international legal expert and the chair of the the Civil Commission for Documenting October 7th Crimes Against Women and Children. And these vulnerable communities, they awaken in us right away the feeling that, wow, our empathy is ignited. Women and children. Cochav, since October 7th, how did you find yourself coming to this most painful depth of horror?
So it's been the reaction of the silence of UN organizations that I've been researching for many years that are responsible for protecting the human rights of women and children worldwide. And the fact that they weren't able to respond to the atrocity that happened here has made me feel an urgent need to react, respond, give voice to the victims, bear witness to the atrocities, and take action, not to stay silent.
Take action. It's a words that we hear a lot. We really do. Never again is now. Take action. All of these catch phrases. But you've decided to take action in some pretty creative ways. Why don't you tell me a little bit about, first of all, what was that spark that got you, I've got to make something different happen? And how have you grown it in these many, many months? This event is already almost far behind us. Many want to forget it, but here you are still fighting the fight. Tell us what you've been doing a little bit, Cochav.
Yeah, of course. I think I just realized that something is deeply wrong. I couldn't explain to myself what was going on. We had hostages. We've seen horrific crimes documented by the terrorists themselves, broadcasted for the world to see, and yet no response from the organizations that I taught and teach of their importance, that were established from the ashes of our Holocaust, from the ashes of World War II. And I just couldn't understand what was going on. I felt puzzled, I felt confused, felt that I need to do something. We have hostages, we have to get them out of there. And I was expecting those organizations to be shocked, to express solidarity, to report October 7th. But when they haven't, I didn't feel creative at all. I just felt that I'm doing what I know best to do. And I started writing petitions, legal reports. I know how to communicate with those experts. As I said, this is my expertise. I actually felt guilty that I'm not doing more. I felt that perhaps I need to go out with my friends and provide humanitarian aid, serve food, clothes to the evacuated populations that are still evacuated, by the way. But I felt guilt that I'm not doing that. And instead, I'm writing to these organizations, to those UN organizations, to function, to raise their voices and give I don't know, to scream with us that we need to get the hostages back, that horrific crimes have happened here. This is not another round of the conflict. And I still remember the General Secretary, poor or dangerous, I don't know, poor is just saying that this didn't happen in a vacuum. October 7th and the anti-Semitic response to it in the weeks just after the attack were shocking. And yeah, I just felt that I need to do something. And again, it wasn't creative. It was just what I knew what to do. Like, this is what I know. So I
Right.
try to do what I know best. I think it kind of, now I find myself telling people, just do what you know best. This is where you will bring
Yeah.
most value.
Yeah. I think that a lot of us felt that way, especially those of us who are moms like you and I. We felt like, what can we do after learning? And we learned pretty much on October 7th. We were already quite fully aware of the amount of sexual violence that took place. Unfortunately, there are those like you and I who also have to delve deeper into the graphic detail. For one reason, because the denial, which is quicker than anybody thought it was going to be, the denial, but also because it's such an untouched, unspoken about subject. How do we talk about this? So you felt a sense of betrayal by these organizations. You directed your energy in a way that you felt capable of and confident to be able to make an impact. And yet you still felt guilty. You know, I think that's also something that we as moms, we have as a part of how we cope. So this opens up several different issues I'd love to unpack with you, which is how have you coped with those graphic elements that you've had to be exposed to? And how do you help the people who are listening to you, or who should listen to you, I should say? How are they receiving this graphic element? Is this a part of the story that needs to be told for the story to be understood?
In at different levels, in different ways. I'll say that we just threw ourselves into the fire. I remember understanding that we need to come up with a legal report, a very brief legal report, like describing what we're seeing. So I started getting into Telegram groups and delving into the information that was circulating actually outside of Israel more than we knew here, because the Israeli media did not share with the public everything, because people could have recognized their loved ones. So we actually
Wow, I
found
did not know
ourselves realizing
that.
that people like you know more than us, and people that I thought that I should convey the information to, communicate to UN organizations, actually know more than us. So today I feel a bit angry that we've exposed ourselves to very traumatizing materials of torture and sexual violence, and the conditions of the bodies when they were found right after the attack. And also asking people to send us more and more information. And that was the beginning. And I delivered a speech at the UN. It was around a month after the attack, a few weeks after the attack. And I told them that we're seeing the same denial mechanisms that are usually inflicted on victims of sexual abuse now being inflicted on us collectively. I could understand the fact that their inability to respond is not only wrong, it's deeply concerning that we're seeing the international system turning against us in many ways. I don't know if it makes sense, but I remember feeling that they are dehumanizing us, asking myself, are we even
Absolutely.
human? What, are we even human? Why aren't they responding? And so I decided that we'll start to document everything. We'll start to collect all the information. And about the question of our graphic, it became our mission to convey to world leaders, meeting after meeting, in a devastating way. I remember crying all day, exhausted by describing the kind of scenes and videos and images that we were seeing, and the information that we're receiving from the morgue. And it was just emotionally exhausting in ways that I cannot explain. I can only say that it doesn't get better. It doesn't get easier, because in time, for instance, we learn the identity of the victims. People that, at the beginning, I felt a bit of a distance because I didn't know most of the names. We still don't know many of the names, but we gradually did get identification of some of the bodies. So once you start knowing the name and the picture of the person before, anyway, it just becomes harder. And we try to do it in teams, but it's just still very complicated.
You mentioned teams. You started this really just you. So you've really, how did you find the people who had the strength, who had the ability to join you on this mission?
It was from the very beginning, I asked other international scholars and international experts to join. And so we were a group of volunteers from the very beginning that tried to advocate for it. When I realized that we have to start documenting and establish an archive, I actually called a few of my best friends. One of them was representing victims of sexual violence for many years. And she was the vice president of Hilma. And I told her, I need your help. It's going to be a historical mission, a national mission, and I need help doing this. And she joined. Her name is Merav Israeli Amarant, the CEO of the commission, and Mirit Samocha, the COO of the commission, and other experts that joined. Today, the head of the archive is the former deputy head of Yad Vashem Archive, Elinor Coitero. It's just a group of amazing men and women that are committed to documenting the crimes, and not only documenting, we also preserve it for legal purposes and analyze it ourselves. It's very different than just collecting information and putting it in a file somewhere to be opened in 50 years. So we opened the files, we analyzed how Hamas operated, what they did, whether there were patterns. For instance, they handcuffed many of the victims of the sexual abuse. So we identified the specific patterns of abuse that Hamas committed on October 7th to be able to communicate it to leaders and to experts all around the world. We do it on a daily basis.
And so when you mentioned earlier just about how it doesn't get any easier, even all of this time later, you have each other as a support system. And do you feel like you've found allies in the world who are also supporting your efforts? Because of course we know that everybody's, growing increasingly against us. And so are there people out there who are standing with you and trying to humanize the Jew as the victim, the Jewish woman, but also in the Jewish family, the idea that woman represents the future of the family? Why did the Nazis make sure to encourage the sterilization processes? Was always as well to prevent the future of the Jewish family. So have you found allies, and does that help you stay strong in this emotional side of the work you do?
Definitely. I love this question. Excellent question. And thank you for even beginning with it. First of all, the team. We have our jokes, even dark jokes. We have to stay sane. We call it humor therapy. We laugh a lot. We support each other. We have our internal, conversations. We cry together. I've been fortunate.
That's not a safe space.
No.
That's not a safe space that many people have today. I think that we have victims all over the world of just not necessarily only one kind of abuse, but anti-Semitism, also sexual harassment as a Jew, and all of these things happening, and they don't have that safe space. You're very, very blessed. It's really lucky.
It's been difficult, and some couldn't handle it for a long time. At the beginning, many young women, some of my students, young advocates that knew me here in Israel, asked to help. But then very quickly they understood that they can't, that it's too much, especially young moms, I have to say. And so I do feel fortunate to have surrounded myself and to be surrounded by amazing women. Most of them are older than me. even a decade older. If you can see the average of our the people that are doing this work, it's it takes resilience, life experience, perhaps not having young children. I don't know. It's just that's the kind
Well,
of
you have young children. You have
yeah.
young children.
I didn't
Yeah.
have a choice. I can't just say no, today I'm not gonna continue this work. Thank you. I've done my work. I feel obligated, historically
Yeah.
obligated. You know, I have to share a funny story. Um, at the very beginning, I remember someone told me, this is your life mission. I was like, no, it's not my life mission. I'm going to do it. I know in my head that this is what I'm doing in the next month. Because as I said, describing and the graphic information about these crimes was one of the most difficult and most common thing that I had to do at the beginning. So I thought I couldn't do it for so long and document it and analyze how they operated. And anyway, I wanted to be a funny anecdote to say that I remember someone from Hadassah, a woman from Hadassah coming to visit us. And I complained. And I told her, no, I'm not sure I can do this anymore. And she was like, no, you shouldn't complain. She's like an old lady. I don't want to hear you complain. Because you're doing it for our people. You need to feel privileged. You need to feel privileged that you were chosen to give voice to those who don't have voice and can't speak anymore. She was like really like a mom or a grandma. That is
You have me crying. It didn't, I know it was intended to be a humorous anecdote, but that to me, it really is I have spent my entire life working with the Holocaust, my whole life since I was a young girl. And I've always said, and I have had to absorb a tremendous amount of atrocity memory and pain. And it's very heavy and it's very painful. But I know that I was chosen for this work by Hashem. I know that this is a blessing and a curse. And I think that you probably feel that way, that we have a choice, but we don't, because it was bestowed upon us to be this strong, this strong. That is how strong we are. You have probably helped so many without knowing it. And this will live on with you. So it's not your life's mission, but it's a mission in your
yeah.
life.
Perhaps it's my life mission, but at the moment, at the beginning, I couldn't have said it. And it was just eye-opening. And it gave me so much strength at the
Yeah,
time. It was the beginning.
yeah,
And I can tell you today that actually the fact that I'm a mother of 4 children, it's also a source of strength. I find myself sitting with my children. It's very healing, especially with the
yeah.
little one. He's 3. He was, I think, not 2 when October 7th happened. And I found myself at the beginning waking up with him at 6 a.m., sitting, preparing coffee for me, and reading him a book in the morning. It was like, who reads a book to your child 6 a.m. in the morning? But I just found it like what I needed to go through the day that is expecting me. So that's what I did. And even sitting with them on the floor, playing, it's what gives me a sense of purpose and strength and healing to continue.
It's very life affirming. And I think that knowing that all of your research and work is going to help others can also be life affirming for you. Talking about you with your team, you have said you have some, this kind of therapy, a little humor, you cry for each other. When you're talking about these pains, what would be your advice to, let's say, a woman out there in the world who has, since October 7th, been living with this reality, but from a distance, not from like you so deep inside, but she's feeling it. Now, this could be a mom, and it could be any woman who's got a teenage daughter who would have probably been at Nova. And we have, people whose young girls, their daughters are being harassed at home, whether it's in America or Europe. There is an increase in harassment against Jewish girls that unfortunately continues to be underreported because these mothers are trying to protect their children. There's not a lot of justice or action or policy that can be changed, really, because we see where things are headed. What would you say is some advice that you could give another person who says, this topic fascinates me, even though it causes me pain? How do I talk about it? What would you tell them?
Difficult one. I want to say and echo what you just said, that Jewish women have become a target and will continue to be a target around the world. I found myself speaking with the Jewish women in Canada, in Germany, in France, in the US, that feel more fearful for their daughters, for themselves, students that shared with me how protesters are telling them, you're next, I'm going to rape you. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I want to say that not all of us have this role of talking about sexual violence. I found myself meeting with women that have experienced sexual violence, and I completely understand if they can't take it upon themselves to talk about it. And those who do feel obligated to talk about it. So I want to say that it's okay. It's okay if you can, if it's okay if you can't. And one of the things that I found useful was actually using the film Screams Before Silence of Sheryl Sandberg. I speak there, and it's I remember before the film was published, I thought how difficult it is to create a film on the sexual violence, and when it was released, I felt that it conveys what happened in such a sensitive way, and in a way that you can bring it to different communities around the world and start a conversation. So that's one way. Filming this film in different communities or in different work environments that you feel safe to share these stories, sharing information, writing even, you know, your experience hearing about this as a Jewish woman, as a Jewish girl. Again, only if you have the ability and the capacity and the sense of that this is something that you feel you can do. So that these are the kind of things that I find useful.
I think that's very powerful and important
And also,
information to share.
you know what I'm thinking? Also, these kinds of conversations among us, creating circles of conversations among us as Jewish women from different communities, just talk about it, and it will, I'm sure it will create this truth that will echo outside these communities and outside these circles of women that talk about what they experience.
I do think that it's important because the fear is palpable, and it's been exposed more and more, all of the varieties of ways that the sexual abuse can take place to both men and women. And I think that that's important to add. And I'm sorry that I do have to add that we both know that on October 7th, there was sexual abuse of children and elderly as well. And it's important to emphasize that because people do not, you hear rape, you assume your mind goes into one direction based on your pre-existing, concept of what that means. Most have no ability to wrap their mind around the barbed wired hands and the plastic ties on the hands. I mean, and the trees in Nova and in the houses and between the families. And I'm touching on those very delicate edges of some of that graphic detail intentionally, because I believe that we have to encourage all of the learners of the world to go one step beyond a comfort level. So I echo all of your suggestions of sharing info and writing about how you feel, but more importantly, also writing about what you know. And in order to do that, we have to know these stories. And in order to know these stories, we have to expose people to very severe pain, which only then awakens a deeper level of fear. Do you think that there is any way that your work in terms of international law, policy change, do you think that it will be productive in allowing us to move on from this state of living in Jewish fear? And I think it really is. I'm not belittling or comparing. There's no competition and suffering here, but we do have a right to identify the unique suffering on women, sexually, but also not only sexually, just emotionally. I know that the hostages have come back, have spoken about how their biggest issue was the fear of rape, not a rape that maybe did or did not happen, but the fear of rape and what it does. That is a controlling form of terrorism. So that's why I'm touching those edges. Please share with us what you think.
So I want to share what we know. We know of sexual violence against women, sexual violence against men, sexual violence against bodies. We know that it happened not only on October 7th, but it continued in Hamas's captivity. And I want to emphasize that it's also sexual torture. We have, I don't know how graphic I should be, but if someone can't hear this, so take a minute to silence your phone. I'll just say that we have videos of burnt bodies that were sexually abused, and it's not just rape. For instance, a video of a man that was burnt in the area of his genitals, so you can see him, his body in awful conditions. So the bodies talk to us the truth of that day. We have videos and images of bodies that were taken out of the rubbles, handcuffed, tortured with object that we know that first responders testify of object in their genitals. We have also information of women who were shot in their genitalia, of mutilated bodies. The condition of the bodies that got to the morgue is just horrific. The torture that was continued in Hamas's captivity, again, against men and women. So it's important for me to share that. About your question about how do we operate, I wanted to say earlier, when you asked about our moral allies, that from the very beginning, it was my strategy or belief or way of living that I can't face evil face to face. So I felt that I can't try and communicate to UN organizations that are not even responding, UN experts that we know personally that have not even taken the time to send us condolences or condemnations of the crime. So I sought for those who want to hear the truth, those who want to listen. We found ourselves going from country to country, looking for moral allies. I felt that it's much more productive and effective strategy, or I don't even
Did you find them?
whether yeah, definitely. I don't even know that if it was a choice. I just felt like we can't, we're already documenting the crimes, analyzing them. So now also fighting for those who don't believe or the deniers who will twist our truth. All I could do is to speak with those who do believe, who want to echo our findings. I'll give you an example because it became huge. We met with the White House, with the White House team, when no one still was able to say and recognize the sexual atrocities. And after our meeting, the White House released a statement of recognition of Hamas's sexual atrocities when no one spoke, and a recognition of our work. And then from country to country, we found those leaders who made sure to release statements of recognition of the sexual atrocities. So I felt in order to echo the truth and to give voice to the victims, we need to find those who have power to speak up for them. And not the social media trolls who were saying this is lies, this Dr. Cochav Elkayam-Levy is spreading lies. I had these campaigns against me from the very beginning, and it was scary. I got death threats and etc. But we just continued believing that we draw our strength from those who believe and stand by our side. And the other thing that I wanted to say is, even now, my aim is to speak with the public, speak with those who want to hear. It's not about UN experts who we continue to send information to, because we can't, leave this this area neglected. So we continue to send information. We continue to communicate with legal experts all around the world. But for me now, I want the world to know. I feel like I want people to know, our people to know, and others. I'll give you an example. We started documenting the torture of families. We found that while we were documenting the sexual atrocities, we were seeing videos of torture of families that looked similar, and how they separated family members, tortured, murdered parents in front of their children, children in front of their parents, the horrified sights in the family members, in the family's eyes when they saw the murder of their loved ones. And I understood that we're seeing something different. So what I did is contact legal experts around the world, legal scholars that have asked to help, and ask them, have you heard of this? Have you heard of the weaponization of families, the torture of families, violence against families? I tried every variation. And we found that it's a crime that was never defined. And so I name it kinocide. You can Google it, kinocide, K-I-N, and side. And as in the systematic torture of family, the reason I'm telling this is just to tell you that today I want people to know here in Israel and around the world that this has happened, that families have become a target of these terrorist groups that are, when you see these videos, you understand that our other terrorist groups can copy it, and they understand that the suffering of family is something else. So it's important for me to get to the public, not just to experts or to national security experts, but just that people will know that this happened, and that will know that it happened in a way that should concern all of us.
Absolutely. I think that knowing we have this potential danger up ahead is, we have lights flashing everywhere in every element of society. And yeah, I think often the family is, we don't think about how we can be targeted. Actually, during the Nazi era, that was also a method. The first method of weakening the Jewish family was to separate the intermarried couples, and also to turn children against their parents. We see this kind of happening also in not a physical abuse way, but at a mental abuse way of terrorism in America and around the world, where we're seeing families be forcibly divided because of their ideologies. Again, it is not a physical rape, but it's, as I've long spoken about, which is the next phase, is the rape of the Jewish nation. The rape of the family is the rape of our entire essence. And I think that when we talk about genocide and the way that an individual family was abused, and here we are, the global Jewish family, as well as the family of humanity, but let's allow ourselves to recognize that there is a uniqueness to how Jews and Jewish families and Jewish women are being targeted, and not discounting, again, any of the other suffering of any other people who have also suffered sexual abuse. But I think that we have to stop apologizing for wanting to draw attention, because the Jewish family is so central to who we are. It's central to our destiny. It's central to our land. So I think it's very interesting. How do you envision that now could impact Jewish families in the world to learn about genocide? What can they do with the information that you're providing to organizations and policy change? What about the common person? What do you think they can do with it, Cochav?
Everything you said is just very, it's difficult to hear. And
I'm sorry.
no, it's okay. I want to say that one of the things that have happened once we started to look into the torture of families and to the systematic abuse of families is that we communicated with other with people that have experienced atrocities elsewhere in the world. So for instance, we spoke with people from the Yazidi community, and they asked us, please write that it happened to us as well, that our families
Yes.
were murdered in front of our eyes, and it's different. And thank you for shedding light on this. So we added a chapter that addresses torture of families in other parts of the world. And we communicated the report to the head of the special tribunal in Sierra Leone, Professor David Crane. And he also asked, please write that it happened in Sierra Leone. And in other parts of the world, we found people asking us to mention that it happened to them as well. And it was shocking to me, and perhaps this is what keeps me going, the fact that giving a language to the victims gives them some kind of comfort, knowing that someone knows, that someone understands what they've been through, that it's not like nothing else to see your daughter or your son or your loved one being murdered and to witness it. It's one thing to know that it happened. It's another thing to witness it. It's something very, very different. And when you talk about what family means to us as a Jewish people, I completely agree. It's very, of course, families are central to every culture, to every identity. And in our culture, it's such a central element in everything that we do. And what we also covered was actually the familial relations within the kibbutzim. It's a culture of connections, of families. My husband's family is from Kibbutz Ramat HaShofet. It's like all of them are one big family that you can't, the children come and go from each other's houses. They don't even knock. It's like when we started investigating this, it's like families felt connected not only to their blood chains or to the blood family, but also to, how would you say? Sorry that I didn't say it.
Neighbors. Their
Not only to
neighbors
their
are like their
biological,
family.
exactly,
Yeah,
not
your
only to their
biological
biological
family.
family, but also to their neighbors, that they live together in such a strong ties and connections and celebrated holidays together, is that in many ways it was there was this element of destroying not only the family but the community, and us as a nation. Hamas still uses videos of familial abuse. Just recently they sent a video of the Horn brothers. One of them was released from captivity, so they filmed the moment when the separation between the brothers. They filmed the moment when the brothers had to separate from each other. And it's devastating to see. And they want us to see it. They want to terrorize us. And it's kind of brings up the dilemma we started this conversation. So how much do we need to know? Because when you know these videos and these images were taken by the terrorists to continue to terrorize us for generations to come, it's for me, I feel that I don't want everyone to be exposed to these materials. I know what it does to me. I can tell you that sometimes when I'm exposed to these materials, I can't sleep. It's not that the images haunt me. It feels like a physical reaction to seeing this, that I just can't sleep. And I know you're thinking melatonin, take melatonin. It doesn't help. It's just a physical reaction that I learned to accept. And I just want to say that I don't think everybody should see this, knowing what it does to me. I'm just this dilemma. I feel like I'm not making sense now. It's just
You
agreeing
are.
with you,
You're
the
making
kind of
sense. You're making sense because none of this makes sense.
agree.
None of this should be taking place. No one should have to absorb as much as you have had to absorb. And I can personally identify quite deeply with the inability to sleep. I spent, too many years immersing myself in the research of violations on women during the Holocaust. And I found myself doing the exact same thing after October 7th. And not just women, then it goes to children, then it goes to families. And for me, I think that it's crucial that you mentioned earlier guilt. Am I doing enough? I do some small thing. I bake every week for celiac soldiers. I have a celiac daughter, and so I bake every week. I send 18 meals, breads, foods, whatever. It's this
Amazing.
little thing that I can do in a world of helplessness. So it's okay if you're not making sense, because that's how everybody in the world is feeling right now. None of this makes any sense because we have a moral foundation for what we believe should be human behavior. And not only were we faced with evil, now we're faced with a denial of that evil and a chant for more of that same evil. And people are becoming incapacitated. They do not know how to respond. They just want to block it out and ignore it. And then there are people like us who we don't have that privilege. I will only share with you that I hope you fill your nights of sleeplessness knowing that there are many, many souls who are accompanying you in that time.
I'm sure of
And
it. I'm certain of it.
that silence of your home at night and your sleeping children, you are providing them space for you to witness before you then start your day again and have to
Don't
go
make me
act.
cry again.
It's okay to cry. I think that we keep telling each other not to cry. I said to a friend recently, I said, sometimes don't you just wish that it was like the first month after it had happened when we were all allowed to be
Yeah.
sad, and we could be deep inside that sadness, and we could let ourselves without apology, and we could say, I have to know more, and I want to know more, and I have to. And now we're like, don't tell me. I want to live my life. I need to be able to stay sane. I think
Yeah.
that Cochav, you have highlighted ways where it could be humor, it could be activism, writing, sharing, identifying, finding. I'm always encouraging through Israel Forever. What we try to do is try to encourage people to find creative ways to bring this into the fabric of their life, their family, their couplehood, their self-identity and empowerment. How do I, as a woman, and we can take this actually to another step of a most recent killing, which is the killing of Sarah Milgram. Now, you and I actually, I believe, both we had crossed paths with her at one point. So knowing the person personally, as you mentioned, once you know the identity, even a year and a half later, the pain is not lessened. And now it's true with a very fresh murder, so to speak. And the way that she was killed didn't involve physical rape, but it's the rape of the human essence that we represent as women, as Jews, the spirituality of that, how she twice tried to escape, even having been shot. And that is that resilience in her. We often hear, well, the nation of Israel, and we're resilient, and Am Yisrael Chai, and very often it feels like kind of empty words. So you have uncovered a way where it's not just about documentation. It is not only about policy, but it's a very personal approach to reminding people we have an obligation. We have to just keep doing, however we do it, whatever level, just to keep going. And I think people are tired. So like you, who is also clearly like me, we're tired. We suffer from what I call compassion fatigue,
Yeah.
in a way. Um, What's your next step? Where do you see this going for you? And I know that's a hefty question, but
It's an excellent question. It helps us continue, you know, asking ourselves,
it
where do we
does.
see ourselves going? It helps us understand that there is a clear achievement that, or I don't know, a clear goal, just not like endless. So I do want to give an answer to a lot of the things that you said. First of all, I'm not only saddened that we're not grieving together anymore in the same way we grieved after October 7th. For me, it's very difficult to see that divisiveness, the divide in the Israeli public, the fact that we're seeing sinat chinam, like people that are so passionately fighting each other here in Israel, and I'm sure also it echoes in Jewish communities, and everything that we see and people and leaders that are fighting here echoed a million times around the world to see the weakness of our society, the weakness of our, I don't know, of our ability to stand united against this very scary threat, not only here on 7 fronts in Israel and against Hamas, but more globally with the isolation that we're seeing around the world. So it's just very difficult to me to, sometimes I feel that I can see these dynamics of hatred in ways that make me deeply concerned about where we're going. I am hopeful when I see my children and for instance, my 15-year-old boy, he's traveling around around the country with his friend. He's very passionate about the state of Israel. So I see in them the kind of love for our country and our people that gives me hope that perhaps it's the kind of our generation that needs to make space for them to continue and take this leadership and make sure we're not ruining everything. And not only here in Israel, but more globally, every country has its own challenges and for us as a people. So that's kind of where your comment threw me about what everything that the processes that have happened since October 7th. And just for us, I feel like we're still witnessing October 7th. And as you said, people want to create this distance, but it's not only a distance from the trauma. I feel like what saddens me is the distance from the sense of urgency and obligation
Yeah.
that it created from the very beginning, that
Even when we have
now,
reminders.
yeah, we can continue where we just were on October 6th. We can continue from there and make the struggle even more how do you so violent even. I can see
It
the
is, it's
anyway,
headed in
so
that
that,
direction.
and you
It's headed in
mentioned,
that direction, but don't forget we have constant reminders. The murder of Tseela Gez, a pregnant woman on her way to deliver her baby.
yeah,
And I'm
it's
going to have
awful.
to I'm going to have to bring up, because I think that a lot of people are not exposed to these pieces of news.
I
They do
know.
not understand that there is an Israeli woman who was murdered by her Palestinian partner,
Yeah,
who, while she was giving birth, was killed, and the baby was killed. This was a thought out,
by
premeditated
a
murder.
Palestinian terrorist, not her partner.
Palestinian terrorist of, well, there's Tseela Gez was a Palestinian terrorist, but a month earlier there was a Palestinian Arab who had murdered his partner, who was
Yes,
giving birth to her baby.
but
And the
yeah,
baby was still, now again, I'm understanding that we don't want to convolute everything together and lump it, because it is not the
exactly.
same. And I'm a believer with genocide, kinocide, all of them, they deserve to be studied and remembered and understood and acted on, each for their own sake. But the murder of the Jew and the targeting of Jewish women and the next generation is not going to end. And we need to, you mentioned, you used a word before, a phrase of our weaknesses exposed. We are so exposed in every way, and we're more busy fighting the
Yeah,
infighting because we
exactly.
don't know how to deal with that war against the very dignity that we represent as human beings, as women, as
We don't
sexual
know,
entities.
and we don't have the leadership to
There
face
you
these
go.
global challenges. I'm
There
not
you go.
talking
We
left
don't
and
have the
right.
leadership.
I truly don't take positions here left to right. I'm just saying we don't have the leadership to face the challenges of today and to create this kind of pathway and policy to face all the challenges that we're facing as a nation and as a people, because now it's intertwined, right? It's not something that you can see separately. And you mentioned Sarah Milgram. I do want to mention her. I met her just a few weeks ago. We were in Washington, and I couldn't, was just, this weekend was devastating, extremely devastating. Such a young life. She was with me at the White House. Remember that I mentioned the White House statement. She organized that meeting for us to be able to share what we know about the sexual atrocities. She was with us then, and we felt so close in that moment in history that we felt alone, and she made sure we wouldn't feel alone. And even when we were in Washington, she made sure we meet with a Pakistani human rights advocate that was wanted to help us. And it was this kind of work that she did as a woman, as a very young life with her partner, to be murdered in this way. It's just, for me, I can't believe that it happened. I just can't bear my mind to think that she's actually gone. So thank you for mentioning her, and the fact that this the anti-Semitism and the hatred, as you know, came closer to you as well, and to other Jewish communities all around the world. It scares me. I said to the Washington Post that I feel like we're losing our legitimacy to exist as Israelis,
That's what they're trying to do.
as people. Exactly, that's what they're trying to do. That's the genocidal intent of October 7th.
Exactly.
That is not
Exactly.
only here on Israeli territory, but all around the world now. And you don't have to be such an expert to know of what the world is developing to become. And when you asked us about our goal, I just want to mention, refer to that as well. For me, I feel like, first of all, we have become involved in legal proceedings to bring justice to some of the victims here in Israel and globally. For instance, here in Israel, some of the families that were targeted by Hamas, Hamas sent them images and videos of their loved ones murdered or tortured or taken to captivity in the most horrific ways. They uploaded it to the Facebook's accounts of the victims themselves. So the first to see, when you see Facebook of your loved one on such a difficult day, you immediately open it. So what they did, they filmed, for instance, they filmed Bracha Levinson. She was bleeding in a pool of blood, laying there, and all the elderly women, her daughters saw it, her grandchildren saw it live on Facebook when they couldn't even reach out and help her. Imagine the devastation and the agony they still face, and they still feel after so many months of seeing their grandma and their mother being murdered in this way and live streamed to them on this horrific day. And another mother, we are now in legal proceeding of a mom that specifically, this is the case we are involved in, of a mom that sent her son, how are you doing? And the terrorist took a photo of his murdered body and sent it to her. So it wasn't one terrorist that was cruel and so creative in his cruelty. It was multiple terrorists that done it in multiple locations in ways that indicate that it was planned. And there was a protocol to torture families in this way. So what gives me kind of as I said, sense of purposeness is that we're now helping them being recognized as victims of terror because they weren't at this site, right? They just got images. So at the moment, they're not recognized as victims of terror. So we're trying to convince the Israeli government to recognize them as victims of terror, and other parts of the world to recognize this kind of terrorism that Hamas conducted. And so we feel after the report was published that others are making use of it in ways that I've never imagined. They're sending it to courts, they're teaching parts of it, as you said. They're teaching parts of it in different ways to different audiences that I couldn't have imagined that will happen. So this is what we're doing, and we'll continue to document. For us, we say usually for the next 2 to 3 years, we feel like we'll collect the critical mass of the information about the sexual atrocities and the crimes against women and children and families. And after these 3 years, we'll talk again, perhaps more in the time. But it's just for us, it helps to know that it wouldn't be that we will be immersed in these materials for so many years, that we will do our part. And then, you don't have to be yourself. We tell ourselves that that it's not necessarily needs to be us that is continuing the work after 2 or 3 years, that we can we will do the most important part of it, and then someone else will carry this. It's not that I don't think I'll continue speaking and giving voice to these victims. It's just the documentation is very painful on a daily basis. So we need to make sure we stay safe ourselves.
And this is also another call to action to encourage people who might be out there who the topic does interest them, that there is a space for them to be involved in this kind of initiative, that there are not only policy and educational ways that it can be used, but also to strengthen ourselves as a society. In the ghettos, documentation was essential. The famous Oneg Shabbat of Emanuel Ringelblum in the Warsaw Ghetto. They documented all of the crimes, as well as all of the moments of life being lived.
Oh, wow.
I think right now you're documenting the crimes. And I hope for you'll be able to continue to document the life that's lived after you're able to bring a little bit of justice. And I know that there is no justice to be found. I'm very, very afraid for the future of increasing use of these tactics. I think that some of the guidebooks that are being distributed on college campuses are basically utilizing these tactics, breaking them down into bullet points to make them easy. How do you target a couple versus targeting an individual man? In terms of bringing about a terror attack, where I personally believe there's a pay for slay system that is embedded in societies around the world that is only now being awakened. And I actually believe that the murder of Sarah and Yaron is one of the first examples of it, not the first. I think that there have been several murders since October 7th around the world where they're questioning if it's anti-Semitism. But, let's not take, that's a huge other conversation to unpack. But I think that it's important for us to realize this is not going to go anywhere. And so we do have to not only think of this as Hamas behavior, but that this is in general the genocidal intent of all jihadist behavior and their collaborators, because the murderer of Sarah was a collaborator who was so deeply believing the ideology they had been fed. And we know of this, what is his name? They call him Goldilocks, a Guy Christensen, some TikTok, personality. And there are more and more, and they're the Andrew Tates, and there are the others who are justifying this type of sexual abuse, whether it is physically sexual or sexual insinuation, those harassments. These are not situations we can prevent, but I will try to bring our conversation to a close by introducing the idea that we could perhaps learn something from them in how we prepare ourselves Should we ever find ourselves, God forbid, excuse me, in such a situation? And unfortunately, I think many families and women of different ages will find themselves in these situations. We actually know of a situation of a man who was kidnapped and abused in England. It never hit the news. You know, the world doesn't really know about these instances. They tell us to shut up, and they tell us to keep our tears to ourselves. They tell us not to be paranoid. They say it never happened. So we have to think proactively. We have to encourage our fellow Jews and non-Jews everywhere in the world, all those communities you mentioned, Sierra Leone and other communities, especially the Yazidi women, and we know even amongst the Syrian women, and we know amongst the Druze women, we now have evidence. Okay, what do we do? And how do we prepare ourselves in a positive and proactive way? And yes, I'll even say, Cochav, you can use some of that, humor therapy, because I do think that we have to make light in order to then breathe and say, how do we tackle this reality so that we are not giving them the right to terrorize us in our souls? What would you say is your prayer in that way? What would you encourage others to do?
Wow. I want to encourage everyone who is listening. I know it sounds like a cliche, but to stay hopeful. I feel like one of their goals is that we lose our hope. I fight it on a daily basis, not to feel that the reality is impossible, but to feel that it is possible and that we can do something and that we should do something, because everything that is happening feels like so like a huge burden, especially when you deeply understand these dynamics, deeply understand these mechanisms that are silencing us, that are not representing the suffering here in Israel, that are dehumanizing us and demonizing us. It's so hard to stay hopeful. So I do want to encourage everyone who's listening to stay hopeful, to believe that we can, for our children, to take action in different ways that you find possible, whether it is to help others, to share art projects from Israel, I don't know, whatever you feel that you can do in this time to humanize us as a people and as a nation, as a country, as whatever you feel that you can do, would be important. And I can tell you, one of the things that keeps me also strong is to know how strong we have become as a people since October 7th. People are searching for their identity. People are taking action in the most amazing ways. I meet different Jewish men and women around the world that are taking action, young people around the world that are choosing to give voice to what's happening here, to give voice to their Jewishness, to share what's wrong in this world at the moment. So let's continue doing that.
Amen. That is so beautifully said, and it's said with such a true heart, one that I know is still broken and continuously healing. I think we internalize it. And I remember when my mentor, Elie Wiesel, always said, how do you plan on doing this without causing pain? How do you teach about suffering without causing the learner pain? And it has been a challenge that I continue to try and live up to. I hope that for all of our listeners today, you've been able to kind of touch the surface of a very, very, really insufficiently addressed issue in a way that at least did not traumatize you too much, that you're able to be inspired by a woman like Cochav, who is really, it's admirable. It's just amazing. And, I look at all of the things that I do, and then I look at you and I say, my God, I've done nothing. What have I done? I haven't done anything. And we have to prevent that from ourselves, to compare. And instead, we have to raise each other up. When I was standing in Auschwitz, and I was waiting for the march to start, and standing in front of me was Juan Stella, and I stopped dead in my tracks. I could not believe I was standing in front of her, because I had heard her story so many times and taught her story so many times. And then I was at another event, and there standing in front of me is Amit Susana, and I taught her story, and I've internalized every part of her fight. And we have to remember, every effort in every way is what makes a difference, because this is a spiritual war for the survival of our people. We as women, we carry the obligation to bring forth new life. And I think, Cochav, not only, biologically with your children, you have brought forth new life, but I think that you continue to bring life for those whose lives were torn apart in a way that none of us wish would ever happen to any other woman anywhere in the world. And I'm just grateful to have, I'm so sorry that I'm crying. But we have to just let ourselves be ourselves. And I'm really honored to have had the opportunity to hear you and give you a chance to share more of your voice. This is very different. I know I've heard a lot of your presentations, and I know that this is a little bit different. It's a little bit personal. And
yeah, I
so
love
I really
it.
want to
Thank you.
You've opened up a part of your heart to our community and to the world, and we are all indebted to you. And I hope that should there ever be anything, a campaign that you need to bring to new eyes and want to amplify the voice, please, Israel Forever is here for you. We have an amazing community and women everywhere who really are looking for, what can I do? Not everybody wants to just continue, and we love our soldiers, but not everybody wants to continue to just write letters to soldiers. We want, or donate money. We want activism. We want something more. I met with a female soldier who endured very horrific abuse as a soldier. She would, and what that meant, that extra layer of identity. And we want to be able to give people opportunities to use every layer of identity to stop what I call again and again, the rape of the Jewish people through our women, our families, our history, our identity, and everything you've taught today, Cochav. This has so much power. So I really want to say thank you. And I hope that you feel empowered by today's conversation. Go and keep doing, and may you continue to go from strength to strength. And I'll join you in your sleepless nights, because we're together. We're together. We are strong.
I do want to emphasize that we are strong, and we do have power to shed light, and to shed light, but we are a light. So let's continue to do that and not lose hope. And continue this.
Well, you are certainly living up to your name, Cochav. You are a star that is shining light for so many. I've been doing this work, and I never really felt I found any listening audience, anyone I could ever talk to about sexual abuse in the Holocaust. And now this taboo subject has suddenly become exposed. And I think that there are new layers to be uncovered, and how your work will have meaning in the future. Thank you so, so much for your time. Thank you for your work. Thank you for your heart. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Amazing conversation that allowed me to bring new
Absolutely. May it be the first of many, the first of many.
Tada.